I was lucky enough to go to EPCOT in the early 90s. So I went in 1991 and 1993, or 1994, I think it might have been. We went to Disneyland in 1993. And I remember going to EPCOT, and I remember thinking, like, Listen to the Land was the most boring attraction I have ever been on in my entire life. My dad wanted to go on it. I'm like going, we're in a gardening attraction, seriously? Are you actually serious? You're making me go round in a boat looking at gardening. I love it now. I think it's that you suddenly realise that you're old and you start loving that attraction. But
I'm old and I don't love it.
I love that.
I do remember being
I'm
there.
like you, Claire. The first time I went on that, I was like, what am I on? Why am I on this?
I remember the music. I remember the song.
I didn't even have the music.
I love the song.
Yeah.
I remember the rain. I remember like the house and the prairie, the whole thing. I remember it all.
Yeah.
But I remember being bored to tears, and now I can't get enough of it.
You didn't jump out and grab a cucumber.
It's especially great
I
around
did
Christmas
not.
when they put all the Christmas lights up.
I haven't seen it at Christmas. I can't wait to do that.
It's great.
But I remember that pavilion because not only was there Living with the Land, there was also the awesomeness of Kitchen Cabaret, which I remember very clearly. Who can't get away with singing veggie fruit?
Veggie fruit. That's it.
And Kitchen Cabaret was so quirky and bizarre at the same time.
Yeah.
And the restaurant that's now Sunshine Seasons, it was a slightly different type of experience back in the 90s. And I think that there's so many things that have moved forward, but the thing about EPCOT is there's always that tangible golden thread running through of the history. And I think that's the bit that even if something new comes along, you still feel that the history's there behind it, which I don't always feel in the other parks. Like the legacy bit of EPCOT is always in place. I had down on my list to talk about the Imagination Pavilion with the jumping fountains that worked. And Journey into Imagination with Dreamfinder and Figment, who I was lucky enough to meet with. And obviously they've just announced in meet and greet with Figment coming out for a D23. They've talked about that, and I remember meeting Figment and Dreamfinder. There is a photo floating around in social media somewhere. And it was the interactive elements of that pavilion with the rainbow tunnel and getting up on a stage and doing all sorts of stuff. I remember that so clearly as I was in my early teens, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is stuff I can do. I can be involved in this. This is something for me to enjoy and to take part in, rather than just to be a passive, passenger around. So, I think the Imagination Pavilion was something very, very different back in the 90s. Maybe one day it'll get back there, but there's a lounge upstairs now, I think, isn't there?
Yeah,
it's the DVC lounge.
It's a nice, quiet space, to be fair.
It wasn't a quiet space in the 90s. I had the Wonders of Life Pavilion down because that sadly is being hopefully worked on as a play pavilion at the moment, maybe.
Yeah, still. Eventually.
Maybe.
But the Wonders of Life Pavilion, I do remember very clearly as well. Body Wars. I love a simulator, but I know it makes some people sick, and Body Wars was the one that made everyone ill. The Making of Me, the less we say about that, the better. It was certainly an experience never to be spoken about ever again if you went with your parents. And then there was the sense lab, so you could go around and touch things and smell things, and again it was that interactive. There was the bicycles, so you could sit and you could cycle, and you could watch a video of, it was like early Peloton, you could watch a video of going around the kingdom as you're cycling along, as you're cycling the video moves. There were so many things that actually you could get involved in, and I think we miss that maybe a little bit now. My personal view.
Yeah, I think that's certainly one of the key parts for me, Claire, was the fact that it was hands-on learning.
Yeah, Communicore was the same. You could go in and you could use the computer, in a massive, and clunky. But you could use a computer. You could speak to someone virtually and book a restaurant. You could go and you could explore what was going to be coming. This computer technology that nobody was using. We had computers in the library at school at that point, and you had to, it was the old dial-up connection and not a commonplace thing. People certainly didn't have cell phones or anything like that.
And we wouldn't be able to do Zoom calls like this.
No, right?
No.
This would not be a possibility.
No.
So I think Communical was a really interesting place, and lots of interactive bits. I had University of Energy down because that was still there in the 90s, and I have a really strong memory of University of Energy, and it's not the ride itself, other than the whole theatre moving, which was wow, but it's the smell. And I know that olfactory memories are really, really strong, but for me the smell when you went into that first room with the dinosaurs and the dry ice in University of Energy, I can still smell that now. It has a slightly sweet bubblegummy smell to it, and it slightly damp bubblegum. I know that doesn't make any sense at all.
So chewed bubblegum then,
It was just bizarre.
They've not brought out a candle with that, have they?
They haven't.
No.
They should.
That's chew bubble gum. Yeah.
It's like sort of dense air, damp bubblegum smell.
Okay, if any
and
candle
that-
companies are listening, you
They
can
do
challenge.
smell.
Want to share? You want to share?
Yeah.
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 But
Do you know,
I
Claire,
remember that
I think
bit.
what was really interesting in the 90s certainly from a Disney perspective, was one where they were seeking real big expansion, and like Euro Disney was opened, and then the realization came that Euro Disney was going to be the most amazing flop, and they were making but they were making huge losses on Euro
Yeah,
Disney.
they were. Yeah.
That all the funding that they perhaps thought that they could put into EPCOT and sort of take that to the next stage of its development was suddenly pulled, because actually they became very aware that they couldn't certainly could
Money
not
had to
have
go
that
elsewhere.
sort of that loss of face of having a European park closed down through lack of finance, and suddenly you're then left with, well, we take the money from EPCOT. It slowed down, I think, an awful lot of the investment that was needed there.
Yeah.
And it meant for a little bit of a tweak as to what Disney actually felt was needed within EPCOT itself. And I think it was like a little bit of a wake-up call in some ways, possibly going back to Horizons as to why that went to seasonal and stuff. But they really sort of were caught with one hand looking towards France, and yet the other a park that certainly at that time was having an almighty struggle to establish its own identity.
Didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Stagnating.
Yeah.
Well, when you
And on
think
the
Hollywood
back of-
Studios
on
had
the
only
back
just
of
opened a few years ago
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
what. Yeah, I was going to say.
And now you open with like 2 attractions, and it's like
Yeah.
it needed a lot of funding, and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
The other thing about EPCOT in the 90s was they did use the opportunity to have stuff on the lake. So I don't remember this, but there was a show, Surprise in the Sky, which had powered hang gliders that came off boats on the lake. I don't know if anyone's ever watched any footage of that. I've been watching like old videos, people's VHSs that they've uploaded to YouTube. Apparently it was nicknamed Mistake on the Lake, which I can understand why. I watched it.
I was going to say that sounds very similar to a current show.
Mark
does.
one. Yeah, Mark one.
But when you watch it, it's also got kites, like big kite things that were horrible failures. So that sounds really
So they
bizarre.
don't learn
They
then.
haven't learned, so
Massive
No.
balloons.
No kites, darling.
And also they had these huge, like 20-foot balloons of characters that suddenly appeared in each of the World Showcase pavilions, dressed in appropriate national costume. So a Minnie in a kimono, suddenly at the end of the show, she suddenly inflated in Japan. It's bizarre. But it's so if anyone wants to see sort of the precursor to what happens now, go and watch Surprise in the Sky on YouTube, because that was interesting. But they also had a parade, so they had John, remind me of Tapestry of Nations.
Tapestry of Nations, wasn't it? And
I was going to say it wasn't the Barbie one, was it?
Oh, I haven't touched on Barbie because I was there when Barbie was, and I just can't even go there. But Tapestry of Nations with stilt walkers and puppets, and it was really unique. It was beautiful. They also had like double-decker buses going around World Showcase.
That's my first memory. And actually now, if you actually did the maths with it, how on earth they got a double-decker bus?
I know.
All the way around.
Well, they didn't have all the booths in the way, did they?
No, I know, but even looking back, how they got a parade round there? I've never known.
I
know. And
every time I think of a parade at Epcot, I think, no, that didn't happen. How?
Yeah, it really did.
It's just incredible.
Parade happened in studios, so
Around World Showcase Lagoon, obviously they didn't have all the booths there. I think the walkway is probably just about wide enough, but there wasn't a lot of space either side of it to watch. That was the thing.
No.
And the other thing that really stuck out for me when I was looking at the research for the 90s and what from my memory is the live entertainment that happened around World Showcase that we just don't see as much of nowadays. They had stuff in pretty much every single country. They did have characters in most countries. There was Robin Hood and Friar Tuck in the UK, and they had Pearly King and Queen dancing and doing the whole, the Lambeth Walk up and down the streets in the UK pavilion, which was great. And they had entertainers. They had comedian in Italy. They had Miyuki doing her candy stuff in Japan, which sadly has gone as well. And like the belly dancers in Restaurant Marrakesh and all of that stuff has just gone. And that for me is really sad, because that was part of the fun of World Showcase. That was the engagement. That was the thing to pull you in. You just take a step bit deeper into the pavilion and find out a bit more. So, I think that's sad. And the Liberty Singers were there. They weren't what we have now, but they were called the Liberty Singers, rather than
Voice of Liberty.
Yeah.
Voices of Liberty. Yeah.
So, what did Epcot do a lot for the new millennium? Do you know? Does anybody know?
Yeah.
Well, they put a big 2000 on top.
Wand on the side of the Spaceship Earth.
Yeah.
And a big 2000 on top of the Spaceship
They were
Earth.
celebrating Harry Potter. They put a wand on the side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen photos of that, and yes, I can understand why that did not go down.
Well, not as bad as the cake on the castle, but
I saw that.
Not
That was
quite, but
I did see that one.
yeah. It was still kind of a sacrilegious thing to do to Spaceship Earth. I actually felt that, again, it's one of them things, who signed it off? Because it was just like...
Michael Eisner.
Yeah, but it was just one of
1990. It's probably
them,
been in place,
But it was a massive time of the park evolving and changing. And again, it was that I think they needed to do something to mark the new millennium. They'd obviously, in getting Tapestry of Nations, I think it was 99, I think that started. And so it saw them through into the next millennium. And what it allowed then was for them to start rethinking about what they wanted the park to be. And I don't know. As much as I don't like the wand, I think it was as a wake-up call to people. And it's like, if you've been before, we're doing stuff a little bit differently now.
Yeah.
Let's move.
We've got a wand!
Yeah. What was funny about it, when we were there in 2013, we found postcards that were being sold in the shop still with the wand on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to dig through it. Might still have one.
Yeah.
Whatever you say about the wand, it's better than the what we had in London.
What do we have?
I don't remember what
The
we had in London.
The dome.
Oh,
the dome.
Oh, the O2.
Well,
Yes. Millennium
Still
Dome.
actually, I
And the
always
wheel.
thought that the dome was kind of an attempt to do Epcot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
It
a
was,
bit
yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Yes.
Half of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right there.
It didn't quite work, but for many reasons. But I think that was kind of what the idea was. Yeah.
I think
Anyway.
there's something we should mention about Spaceship Earth structure, because that sphere is just, for me, it is the most incredible structure.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I know they put some lovely lights on it now, and they do all sorts of projections and fun stuff. But just that massive sphere, and the fact that there's an attraction inside it kind of blows my mind still every time I go on it.
Yeah.
But it's so incredible. And for me, it's like it feels like the heart of Walt Disney World, really. Nowhere else has anything like that. There's castles all over the place, but nowhere else has got one of them.
Also worth mentioning was the fact that at the October the 1st, 1999, so the start of, was it Illuminations 2000, Reflections of Earth, which again becomes that iconic
Yeah.
sort of show that we've okay, it has changed, it's evolved over the years until it's passing. But to have that starting for the millennium as well, it kind of showed that there was that whole aim of trying to drag a theme park into people's consciousness. And again, one of those things that let's do things a little differently than perhaps we thought possible. But between that, the parade, and the wand, I think by the time we got to the millennium, I think Epcot had got itself on a little bit of an upward curve as regarding people's, certainly putting on people's list of
Yeah.
what they wanted to do on the holiday. But yeah, I still think Reflections of Earth. I don't care what anyone says. It's still right up there with just one of the most amazing nighttime attractions. It was something else, and I think in its early days when everything worked properly, it was something else. And the music itself, the music.
Yeah.
The music's incredible.
Thank you for listening to the Great British Mickey Waffle. We would really love to hear from you, and you can find us at GB Mickey Waffle on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Or you can email us at waffleon@gbmickeywaffle.com. There are many ways that you can support us, and the easiest way is to leave us a rating and a review on your podcast app. And why don't you share the show with your friends too? Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe for even more waffle.